The following podcast is provided by Athira Pharma and Answers for Elders Radio.
And welcome back, everyone, to the Answers for Elders Radio Network, also on your favorite podcast channel. And we are here again talking about Lewy body dementia clinical trials. And certainly, I am learning so much about this process, and I hope you listeners that are still with us are doing so also. And we're privileged to have Dr. Daniel Burdick from the Evergreen Hospital Medical Center in Kirkland, Washington. And Dr. Burdick, thank you for sharing your knowledge with us this hour. And, I'm learning a lot about this. This is amazing. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Yeah, no, thank you for having me, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to share these things.
Well, it's important work for sure. And so, Dr. Burdick, we've been talking about this amazing clinical trial, and I know we're closing up and we always want to close on a positive note, but I know that there's going to be probably people that have listened to all this and they're going like, this might be too good to be true. I'm not sure, all of those things. So first I want to just go through and address the misconceptions people have sometimes to clinical trials. Would you kind of share some of the things people ask you about those things?
Absolutely. One topic that I get asked a lot about, and I've mentioned this earlier, but one topic is the question of the placebo.
Mm-hmm.
I think people have, I don't know if it's a misconception per se, but they have an expectation that the reason to go into a clinical trial is because it will benefit them.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we hope it will, but we don't know that for sure.
Sure.
And so when they hear that there's a chance for having a placebo, they say, well, then it's not really worth it. And that's the misconception, because it definitely is worth it. As I mentioned earlier, the only way we can really know if a treatment is safe and effective is by comparing a group of patients who take it
Mm-hmm.
with a group of patients who don't. And really what we're all wanting is to drive better treatments for the future.
Sure.
And so even if a person participates in a trial, gets the placebo for that double-blind period, they're still contributing to something that's going to make their own future better. So for that 6 months, you may or may not get something that's beneficial, but it helps for the future after those 6 months,
Mm-hmm.
potentially.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, I can't emphasize enough the importance of that placebo arm.
Yeah.
So that's one misconception. I think another misconception might be stage of disease. So some people feel like that you'd go into a clinical trial only if there's like no other chance, no other hope, right?
Yes.
And where that might have been the case in oncology trials, some other era. That's definitely not the case with neurology trials. It's really not the case for the SHAPE trial or for other trials in dementia with Lewy bodies or Parkinson's disease.
Mm-hmm.
We're really looking for patients who meet the eligibility criteria, but have maybe not completely advanced disease or a moderate stage of disease. There are other trials in Parkinson's, for instance, that are looking for very early Parkinson's patients to try to
Mm-hmm.
make a difference in the course of the disease. So regardless of your stage of disease, you can find a clinical trial to participate in.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, and I think the other thing, what's that? Go ahead.
Those are the two misconceptions I would call out.
Yeah. I think the other one just basically is, I'm beyond help. In other words, feeling this depression side of it, like it's not worth it, or it's not going to make my life any better anyway, or that feeling of, it's not worth the time kind of thing. And I think that's the thing where a lot of people think, oh, that's nice, but kind of a thing. And then the other side that I always hear is I don't want to be a guinea pig, quote unquote. What I really want to emphasize is that any drug that you're going to give somebody is safe, is it not?
Well, yeah. So that's actually a couple of really important points there. So number one, by the time we're testing a drug in patients with the target disease, like dementia with Lewy bodies, Parkinson's disease. It has already gone through at least, of course, animal studies, and then a phase 1 trial, which is usually conducted in healthy individuals. And so those are the individuals, healthy patients, healthy people who have volunteered to just try this brand new drug and make sure that it's safe. So by the time we're getting to this SHAPE trial, which is a phase 2 study, it's already gone through the initial safety trial. I mentioned, of course, we're monitoring individual safety during the course of the trial very carefully. That's really important. But we do have experience with a number of other people who have already used this drug. So I think that's important. Yeah, I think that's a really important point to make. Thank you.
Well, and I think that's the important thing. And so, I want everyone to know that you are worth it. And I also want to know, like, who's your ideal person? If you were going to sign somebody up for a trial, who's the kind of person that fits for this trial?
Yeah, absolutely. So for the SHAPE trial, we're looking for people who are between the ages of 40 and 85. So it's pretty broad range for ages. Ideally, well, by definition, diagnosed with Parkinson's disease dementia or dementia with Lewy bodies. And to be honest, we're willing to do an assessment to see if there's dementia. So if you've noticed, say you've been diagnosed with Parkinson's disease and have noticed some of these cognitive symptoms we were talking about earlier, trouble remembering, trouble understanding, trouble with planning or executing sequential steps, we can have you come in and do an assessment and see if it's something that would be interesting for you and you'd be eligible for it. At the very least, maybe not come in, I guess, right away, but our research coordinators could talk to you on the phone and get a little bit more history and go through the other eligibility criteria and make sure that it's that you qualify. So
and as far as, is there a cost to participate in the study?
Oh no, thanks for that question. Absolutely not. There's no cost for any of the visits. Everything within the clinical trial itself is paid for. In fact, there's a small stipend for each visit. So you'd be getting a small
so they actually get their gas paid for or their parking costs or anything like that. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's free parking here too. I'll throw that out. But yes, covering the gas costs or something like that.
Yeah. And you obviously, you say people come from, they drive a little ways away. It probably is a good idea to live pretty much in the, greater Puget Sound area, correct? Just to make sure that you've got where your net is, basically.
Well, yeah, certainly for our study site. I mean, we have patients coming from as far north as Blaine, a couple from Bellingham, some from the other side of the Cascades. But certainly within maybe a 2 to 3 hour drive.
Okay.
It's most common.
Sure. Yeah.
But I will say too, I should point out that, as you mentioned earlier, the SHAPE trial does have sites elsewhere in the country. And so if you're interested in listening to this somewhere else, by all means, go to the shapetrial.com website and find a site that you could use to participate.
Absolutely. And that's, and for those of you that are listening to us on podcasts or on YouTube, certainly check the website and see if it is in your area. And I just want to talk briefly, just to close out, is talking about quality of care. I think one of the things that we touched on it earlier, but I really want to bring it home to the fact of participating in a clinical trial, in my estimation, is probably the best quality of care anybody can have because of the extra attention. You're much more involved in, all that, you're monitored more closely. You're certainly equipped to recognize progression of an illness that they may not that may not be noticed by an average individual, and things like that. Obviously, we want to make sure that every single thing that the people that are involved in the clinical trials have the highest standard of care, and certainly working with Evergreen Hospital is the case. Now, and the last question that I want to ask is, what if somebody has a different primary care doctor, let's say, and that's outside of Evergreen Hospital? How does that affect that relationship? Do you have interaction with their primary care physician or that person that they're working with? How does that work?
Well, sure. And actually, we have many patients who are not within the Evergreen Health system. So we welcome patients from, throughout. And yes, we will communicate with primary care doctors. We do ask for medical records from them, in fact, as part of the screening process. And actually, when there are any medical concerns that come up through our safety evaluations, we communicate very closely with the primary care doctor's office to arrange for follow-up if some abnormal lab comes up, for instance. But yeah, I mean, just to your point, I think the attention that's paid during a clinical trial is intense. Like, we're really communicating closely with these patients and really, frankly, building a bond. I think everybody who participates in a clinical trial feels much more of a connection to the people.
Hey, if I saw my doctor every, couple months, every 6 weeks, that'd be pretty amazing. They know a lot more about me than they do like my once a year visit, right?
That's absolutely true.
That is correct. So doctor, how do we reach you and how do we get involved in the trial? Why don't you give us the website again?
Website again. So it's www.shapetrial.com. And for the Evergreen Health website, it's evergreenhealth.com/research, or you can call 425-899-5385.
I am so honored that you were with us this hour, Dr. Burdick. It's been just a pleasure and an honor to visit with you. And I hope that those of you that are listening out there, pay attention to your loved one if they have Parkinson's disease or anything associated with that. If you have questions, please pick up the phone and call. And certainly I want to thank extra special thanks to Athera Pharma, who brings us these amazing conversations from the top doctors across the country and the world. And we are just really honored that you spent the time in your busy schedule, sir, to be with us today. So thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, Suzanne.
And to each and every one of you, please know that you're loved and you have a family that loves you. So I hope each and every one of you out there remembers one thing as I sign off: be good to each other. Take care till next week.
The preceding podcast was provided by Athera Pharma and Answers for Elders Radio. For more information about the Alzheimer's clinical trial, go to atheraclinicaltrials.com.